What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, April 13th, 2017. We sure happy it's Thursday, sure happy it's Thursday, sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Dan is in our control room today, ready to answer the phone when you call on in, put you on the air with your questions and comments. And the war machine is moving ahead, obviously, and that's very frustrating for me because one of the main motives for doing what I've been doing for all these years was I could see this agenda to get us into a new world war to try and distract from all the other problems in the country. And I had really thought that with Trump's election, we had derailed the rush to World War III, and obviously that did not happen. War will have its way, ultimately, and we're having to deal with that ugly reality. The United States has, for the first time in actual combat, dropped the massive ordnance airburst bomb, the Moab, which is sometimes called the mother of all bombs. It's America's largest non-nuclear bomb, and they dropped it in Afghanistan on some caves. It's 26,000 tons of explosive. And it is a huge, huge bomb. It's been tested a couple of times. This is the first time that it's been used in combat under the very sort of generalized excuse that, hey, there's ISIS down there, and that was the reason that we went ahead and we did all of that. So we don't know what's going on. And what's really interesting, I noticed in the corporate media, every time they talk about the story, they show film and video from a test of this bomb back in 2003. They're not actually showing where this bomb was used and what it was used on. And obviously a bomb that large, which is designed to hit deep underground targets, it's still exploding on the surface, and that means anything around it, including civilians, are going to be wiped on out. But I'm sure the White House is going to come on out and say that ISIS had nuclear weapons down there. They had germs, they had chemicals, they had a Death Star, they had a big stack of overdue library books, and they had it coming to them. Or maybe it was just done to show other countries that we really do have an insane, psychotic government that is willing to do these things. Cruise missiles into Syria, Moab into Afghanistan, potentially nuclear strike into North Korea. And that kind of a terror campaign often has a flashback, as it were. Now then, little bit of an embarrassment going on for Donald Trump, because apparently when he had his little news conference with Fox Business, and he was talking about his dinner with Xi Jinping down in Mar-a-Lago, or I guess we should call it War-a-Lago now, and he was talking about this wonderful chocolate cake and everything, and then he goes and he says, we've just launched 59 missiles heading to Iraq. He can't even remember what country he's making war on here. And I think it's underscoring Trump isn't really in charge anymore. Somehow he's been co-opted. My favorite theory is they made a war Trump over there at Westworld. Anyway, we are seeing all these articles coming on out. Nobody's buying this original story about Assad gassing his own people, nor should they. Let's be, I mean, it was absurd on the face of it. And unfortunately, as that story continues to fall apart and the situation in Syria looks worse and worse in the political sense for the United States, I'm deeply concerned that this is what's motivating this rush toward confrontation in North Korea. So the corporate media next week can say, forget all about that Syria and Assad gas thing. That's old news here. Now we've got North Korea, and this is really horrible. But we're seeing articles in places like zcom.org, U.S. strikes on Syria based on a lie. And apparently the gist of this article is that the U.S. intelligence agencies knew that Assad had not dropped a military chemical weapon on innocent civilians in Idlib, and some of them are talking about going public on this before the situation spins out of control. Now, remember, the White House is out there saying, we know Assad did this. Went up to the United Nations, and everybody says, show us the proof. And Nikki Haley says, well, it's all classified. But trust us, we really know that that Assad did this. And, of course, nobody's going to pay any mind to that, because the U.S. claimed Assad gassed his own people in 2013 and 2014, and Saddam had nuclear weapons and all the rest of it, all of which were lies. So nobody's going to take the government's word about anything at face value. So then, earlier this week, they came out with this little document that looks like a hastily re-edited version of the 2013 claim that Assad was gassing his own people. The names and places were changed and so forth, and that was about it. And they held it up and said, here is the proof. Well, it isn't a proof. It's a government report with a bunch of accusations. And a government report is not proof of anything. Accusations are not proof of anything. And everyone was saying, okay, this report claims you've got all of this stuff. Let us see it. And now we are hearing from the White House that they cannot release this information because it will compromise sources and methods. How many times have we heard that before? When we tell the government, you must prove to us beyond a reasonable doubt that there is a just cause for this military action. And we're back to this same old thing. You just have to trust us. No, we do not trust you. We have been lied to way too many times. And in the absence of incontrovertible, verifiable proof of your allegations, the safe and prudent assumption is you're lying to us yet again. Liar, liar, pants on fire. We're going to take a second to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates just now rejoining our network. Now, Philip Giraldi is also out there saying that the intelligence community of the United States and much of the military are not buying this story either. And again, it was absurd on the face of it. Assad had all but won his war against the U.S.-backed rebels. Peace talks to end the war were starting. And 2 weeks ago, the White House was saying they were ready to accept Assad staying on as leader of Syria. And then all of a sudden, Assad says, oh, with everything going my way, I'm going to go ahead and do a gas attack on civilians, which will turn the tide against me and prolong the war. And it just didn't make any sense. There was no reason for him to do it, and every reason for his opponents to do it and frame him for it. Nobody bought this story. And all those corporate media prostitutes and correspondents who are out there trying to say, oh yes, Assad did it, I'm sure in their heart of hearts, they know it's a nonsensical story as well. But that's why they're paid those $1 million salaries, to keep their own thoughts to themselves and just read what's on the teleprompter as convincingly as they possibly can. Okay, yet another expert, highly decorated scientist by the name of Postol, has come on out, and he said this really doesn't work. He's pointed out all the flaws in the story. One of the few photos actually released that claims to be of a chemical weapon munition, he says it's obvious from the photo that the debris there didn't explode. Something exploded next to it, but that's it. And it just undermines it. There's nothing there to support this. And we've been down the road with mislabeled pictures before. Remember that trailer in Iraq, and we were all told, it's a mobile biological weapons laboratory. No, it was a balloon inflator. Remember when Colin Powell got up there at the UN and he had these black and white photos, very blurry, with these little fuzzy dots and arrows that said, this dot is a biological weapons transport vehicle, and this one is a decontamination. And you couldn't tell from the photos, and everybody was saying, why are you showing us black and white photos? All of our current surveillance satellites take images in color. And following the invasion of Iraq, inspectors went on out to the locations that were photographed, identified what had been photographed. It was ordinary firefighting equipment. Just lie after lie after lie. Now, Assad has gone on out and says that as far as he can tell, all these videos of dead children in the Syria chemical attack were faked, and we know that's true. We've all seen the one of the girl who's lying there motionless, and they're saying, oh, she's dead, and the camera passes her. Then the camera comes back a little bit, and she's opened her eyes to see if the camera's gone. And we link that to that story as well. And, of course, the corporate media, how dare Assad say something so horrible that we would fake picture evidence to try and... I am disgusted. I am totally disgusted. Again, George Galloway's out there saying Assad is not mad enough to carry out a chemical attack. There was no motive for him to do it. That's the missing piece by which we know this story was garbage. Now, Sergei Lavrov is still out there justifying Russia's veto of the UN Security Council resolution saying, we're not convinced Assad carried out chemical attacks. And by the way, we still haven't seen any proof of Russian-sponsored election tampering in last year's U.S. election. And they're just reminding everybody of all the lies, the sheer volume of lies coming out of Washington, D.C. And they should. Now, Nikki Haley is out there trying to bash Russia for refusing to go along with the Security Council resolution, which was written from the point of view of simply declaring up front Assad did it, and we have to take actions and find out more details. But the resolution was written on the assumption Assad really did it, and that's why Russia vetoed it, and that's why China abstained. And she's out there saying Russia's refusing accountability. And she even made the comment that by not going along with condemning Syria without any evidence, that Russia was being uncivilized. And that's actually a very deadly insult to a Russian, because a big part of their cultural identity is being cultured and being civilized. Now, the reality is that it is not Assad who is killing civilians in Syria and Iraq. Article coming out of RINF.com. Report by the British monitoring group Airways has found that the death toll from U.S. airstrikes in Iraq and Syria nearly quadrupled in the month of March as compared to the last full month before Donald Trump entered the White House. Reported civilian deaths jumped from 465 in December of 2016 to 1,754 in March of 2017. That's a rise of 277%, and certainly far more people than were claimed to have been killed in Idlib. Story coming out of Stephen Lenderman's blog. Flashpoint in Syria risks U.S. war on Russia, and that really is the crux of the problem. I know that I don't want the U.S. to go to war with Russia and China. I estimate we will lose. I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of people listening to this show are intelligent enough to understand all the reasons why we should avoid a new major global war. Unfortunately, we have a bunch of nutcases in power who think war is good. War will fix all the problems with this country. Because it worked the last two times. Crash of 1907, World War I, crash of 1929, World War II, crash of 2008, and we're off and running again. And actually, that is not exactly what happened. All the world wars did was mask all the domestic problems behind this high fever of, oh, there's a war on, there's a war on. Now, the U.S. economy improved after World War II because of the Bretton Woods Agreement, and the fact that all the other nations all across Europe and Asia had had their industrial base bombed into rubble. And so for a decade following the end of the war, everybody had to buy things from the United States of America, machine tools, drill bits, ball bearings, whatever. And that was what America's post-war prosperity was built on. And maybe that's the game plan again. Nuke the rest of the planet back to the Stone Age and offer to resell them all the things we just destroyed. So, another very alarming article, this one out of Investment Watch blog, relationship between Russia and the United States approaching the danger zone. There are two conflicting reports about what happened in Syria. Somebody is lying, obviously. And since Russia wasn't the one telling us Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, Saddam had nuclear bombs, he had germs, he had all the rest of it. Obviously, I'm going to give Russia the benefit of the doubt here, based on the long track record of lies we've seen coming from Washington, D.C. And everybody is very, very nervous about what's going on here. Over at Paul Craig Roberts' website, he's got an article, Is That Armageddon Over the Horizon? And it's crazy times. We got rid of the old fool in the White House. We got a new fool in the White House. Tillerson's running around the world, delivering ultimatums, thumping on his chest, making false accusations. And everybody's out there saying, Russia's preparing for hot war, North Korea's preparing for hot war. No, all these other nations are preparing to defend themselves from an obviously aggressor nation. We're the ones who've gone rogue. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call. Ramsey in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm fine.
You see, sir, I want to ask you something, because I've been arguing with people about this United States attack in Syria. And see, sir, the common argument that they say that Donald Trump agreed to attack Syria because the opposition, like the Israel lobby or Jewish lobby or whatever you want to call it, the neocons, all these people, they threatened to blackmail Trump. If he doesn't bomb Syria, they're going to expose that Russia hacked into the election. But see, sir, I told some of these people it doesn't make any sense that if the opposition had the evidence that Donald Trump's election got hacked by Russia, why did they do this now? It doesn't make any sense that they do this now.
Good for you. Good for you.
If they had the evidence, then
Good. Yeah, you're thinking. Good for you. You did exactly the right thing there, and you have to encourage other people to just, does it make sense? And that is the most important question anybody should ask. And you're absolutely right. It doesn't make any sense. And, it's obvious Donald Trump has done a 180. We don't know for what reason. Is he being blackmailed? Is he being threatened? Did they show him the Zapruder film and say, hey, we can get away with killing presidents if you don't cooperate with us? This is what happened to the last president who decided to go his own way. Maybe his financial backers yanked his leash that they've got on him because of that financial backing. Or remember that video of Harry Reid on CNN. The intelligence agencies are lying to Donald Trump. They've got him completely cocooned in their own little matrix where what he thinks he's seeing as the real world is a carefully constructed fake to get him to do what everyone wants him to do. At this point, it doesn't really matter the why anymore. What matters now is we are back on that path to World War III, and we've got to find some way to derail it.
Yeah, because, see, sir, the thing is, if these people had the evidence to blackmail him, they would have done it from day one.
I agree. I mean, certainly, they would have overturned the election. They would have put Hillary in. There's no evidence. There's zero evidence Russia interfered with the election. There's absolutely none. It's another baseless allegation. What you need to do, what we all need to do, is just wake people up to the idea that government and corporate media lie to them not once, not twice, but all the time. That's why I wrote that article, Of the Liars, By the Liars, and For the Liars. Because rulers always lie to their people to control them. And we need to teach that to everybody so that they understand this is how they're being controlled. They're being fed fairy tales to get them to go along with what the rulers want them to do.
Yeah, thank you.
And again, you did the right thing. Good boy, download a cookie. You did the right thing. You thought it through. You thought about it, and you found where it did not make sense. So good for you. I'm proud of you. Okay, we're going to switch over to Donna in New Mexico. Aloha, Donna. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. This bombing today in Afghanistan has really crossed my red line with Trump. I voted for him. I rolled the dice and thought, well, maybe there's a chance we're going to avoid a third world war, a better chance than we'd have with anybody else, and certainly I would never vote for Hillary Clinton. But at this point, I'm wondering if he's willing to drop that bomb, and it doesn't really achieve a purpose to drop that kind of bomb where he did, what else is he willing to do? Because I see on a daily basis now an escalation that I find quite unnerving. And I'm angry. I'm really angry.
Well, you should be angry. You know, to heck with anger management. It is time to be totally ticked off here. Donna, stay on the line. I want to continue this discussion after we come back from these few commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're still talking with Donna in New Mexico. And all we know about the Moab being used in Afghanistan is it was dropped on ISIS. And they're not saying why or what ISIS was supposedly doing, or even exactly where this thing went down. All of the corporate media so far that I've seen they're all using footage from a 2003 test of the Moab and saying we just used it. And so we don't even know why. But it's very obvious that they're keeping the information very, very close because as large as it is, and it did explode above ground, anything in the area was wiped out along with whatever underground structure they were trying to crush with it. And that may mean more civilian dead. And right now, the U.S. government's very sensitive to that issue after something else that happened in Syria last night. And so, as I mentioned earlier, Trump may have dropped it just to prove to the rest of the world that our government has gone crazy and is ready and willing to use such weapons on a hair trigger.
Well, my concern is that if they're willing to do this, this is rapidly building.
Yes.
If they're willing to do this now, what else are they willing to do? And after today, because I don't see the purpose of dropping that bomb other than to send signals to other countries, specifically Iran and North Korea, and maybe others as well. I cannot believe that Trump diehard supporters are celebrating this. I have listened to some things today and read some things today that I just can't believe. Alex Jones among them, justifying, excusing, apologizing in his way, just saying, well, we're living in a different world. But that's not what he said when Trump was campaigning, and that's not what he said when Obama was doing things like this. So the hypocrisy here is really disturbing. And I find it, I don't know if you caught the little press moment that Trump had shortly after that bomb was dropped. He was joyous about it. So I have a hard time believing, that these people who keep defending him think that this man is somehow somebody that other than what he is.
Do you remember ever seeing the footage of Harry Truman's announcement about the use of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima when they announced
Yes.
to the world that they'd done this? I actually got to see the unedited version where before he's starting the speech, he's smiling and grinning ear to ear. He just thinks this is so great. And I think they're both victims of the adrenaline rush. Have you ever used a firearm, for example?
No.
Okay. Well, speaking as somebody who used to make and shoot black powder firearms, I will admit to it. The first time I fired off my Hawken gun, I was grinning ear to ear. Look what I just did. And that may be part of what's going on. But it does betray a degree of callousness all along. It depends. Again, we don't know exactly what was hit by that Moab, and we don't know if more civilians have been killed. It is very clear looking at the numbers from all these organizations that the U.S. is killing far more civilians than Assad is accused of doing. And the corporate media, we've got a dead child over here. Well, what about the millions of kids who literally starved to death in Iraq from a decade of sanctions? Oh, well, they don't matter. Only the dead kids that can be used to push the war agenda are of concern to America's corporate media. They're just totally overboard into propaganda right now.
I did hear an interview with an Afghan reporter on RT just about an hour ago, and he was reporting from that area. He said there wasn't a dwelling in the area that didn't have broken windows. He also said that it was a farming, sort of a farming area, that one that is caught between the Afghan government forces and ISIS and Al-Qaeda on the other side. And these people are stuck right in the middle. So I will not be surprised at all to hear of casualties because of the bomb radius. I want to say one more thing, and then I'll go. The cake and tomahawk moment that Trump had, it's inconceivable to me that he could not distinguish between Iraq and Syria in that moment.
Yeah.
Being interviewed, and then it just like washed right over him when she corrected him and said, "Well, you mean Syria." I don't know who that guy is in the White House. I'm not even sure that he has control. I don't think any of these guys really do, whether it was Obama or Clinton or Bush or whatever. I think it's the deep state.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm livid, and that's all I wanted to say. Thanks from Iran.
Well, you're welcome. I have one observation about this. I mean, if it's they dropped that bomb in farming country, then yeah, probably a lot of people got hurt. We got to take another break for commercials. We'll be back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we were discussing with Donna this Moab bomb dropped in Afghanistan. And it's kind of interesting because the corporate media is saying, this is all about ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And yes, there are some ISIS and Al-Qaeda up in Afghanistan, but the government's main problem is with the resurgent Taliban, who were basically in charge of Afghanistan until the most recent U.S. invasion, when they wanted to go on in and secure an inexpensive pipeline right-of-way, as well as access to Afghanistan opium, which had been eradicated under the Taliban. And so I find it interesting that they're not mentioning the resurgent Taliban, because last I heard, the installed puppet rulers of Afghanistan are only in control of about half that country. It's another quagmire. So maybe they used that bomb just as kind of a terror tactic, saying, you better stop resisting our puppet ruler or we're going to drop one of these things on you. All right, back to the phones. Peter in Dallas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I'm a Trump supporter who also is disappointed with the bombing in Syria. But I've been pretty happy with him, his domestic policy. I think he's done a lot of good things. So I, myself, personally have got to decide whether or not this guy is damaged goods, or can I forgive him and we move on? Your attacks on him are pretty relentless and ruthless, and I'm just wondering, have you given up the ship? Are you saying, I'm done with the guy, I want him out? And if you're not, they're pretty effective, and you might get that anyway.
Well, I'm done with the guy because he's kept his campaign promises that weren't really a threat to anybody of significant power and influence. But the promises he broke were the ones that were most important to those of us who supported him. An end to foreign interventions, a turning away from the war agenda. We're talking about risking global war that's going to go nuclear. And yeah, I'm not a person who makes his decisions based on loyalty or friendship. Okay, I'm judging the man by his actions, moment to moment to moment to moment. And if tomorrow he comes on out and does something great, I'll applaud him for it. I've applauded him for his policy regarding NASA and immigration. He's already pulling back on a lot of his economic promises. But all of a sudden, this reversal to go forward and push this war agenda, that is a betrayal to everybody who supported him. And as I said before, when Donald Trump sent those cruise missiles into Syria, he didn't just destroy a Syrian airfield, he destroyed any chance he's going to have of a second term in office. Okay?
Well, I get it. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go now. Back to the news here. John McCain is not helping the situation between the U.S. and Russia at all. He's flapping his gums all over the place here. This entire year, everywhere he speaks, it's always Russia must be destroyed, Russia must be destroyed, Russia must be destroyed. Here's your rifle, John. I'm really sick and tired of hearing all these people out there who say we've got to go make war on Russia, but I don't see them actually getting on the plane or the boat to go there and do it. They want your kids to be killed and crippled. They want your money to be spent. John McCain wants you to go on out and murder people he doesn't like. And if I remember correctly, that was what they threw Charles Manson in prison for. So, article over in, well, actually, the link to it was broken. If nuclear war breaks out, which U.S. cities would be targeted first? It's a very important question. It is a very important question because we all know where we live, and there's a concern. Even as early as this weekend, we could see nukes in use over in North Korea. And because of the display of knee-jerk, reckless actions by the administration, everybody who's got nuclear weapons, they've got their fingers hovering over the button because they don't know what to expect. They're dealing with a nuclear-armed nation that is attacking other countries on the basis of fairy tales and wishful thinking. Now, Google is reporting that searches for World War III have hit an all-time high. I am hardly surprised about that. I linked to a website called Nuke Map, and it is a web page where you can put in a location, probably your home, or probably a nearby likely target, and you can put in the yield of the nuclear weapon, and it will display the nuclear weapon effects. And you can select ground burst, air burst, so forth and so on. And obviously, in my case, I selected Pearl Harbor, which is right out that window. And the only good news I got from this is that North Korea's largest nuclear weapon that they've tested so far, if it was dropped on Pearl Harbor, it would rattle our windows and that would be about it. But every currently used Chinese and Russian nuke, if one of them hits Pearl Harbor, we're going to be gone. And the Republic Broadcasting System will play polka music in this time slot. It's now a reality. And I did put up that other article about the trinitite. And what trinitite is, I have a very small piece of it. It's a bit of desert sand that was underneath the explosion of the world's first nuclear bomb, Project Trinity, hence the name trinitite. And it's in my world-famous debris collection. And here's the point we need to be making as we talk to everybody. The U.S. is out there invading other countries, attacking other countries because we think they have nuclear weapons, or maybe they might want to get nuclear weapons, or they're all dangerous, wacko crazies. And you need to remind everybody that right now, only the United States has actually used nuclear weapons against another country. And the United States soaked my parents' generation for something like $5 trillion back at a time when $1 trillion was really a lot of money to build our nuclear deterrent. The missile silos all over the Midwest, the B-52s, the cruise missiles, the ballistic missile submarines, and we were told all this expense was needed to deter an attack. That the reason nobody was trying to invade us is we had the nuclear weapons. Well, doesn't common sense tell you that's the reason these other countries have nuclear weapons? Even if Saddam Hussein had had a nuclear weapon, what was he going to do with it? Put it on display in a museum, march it down the street in a military parade and say, look how butch I am? He was never going to use it against either the United States or Israel because the United States and Israel have nuclear weapons and would reduce Iraq to a giant piece of that green glass I was talking about. The same thing applies to Iran. If Iran ever does develop a nuclear weapon, they are not going to strike first at the U.S. or Israel. What they want the weapon for is to deter an invasion. And with the United States and Israel constantly invading other countries, common sense says you need something to prevent them from crossing across your border. The U.S. has been talking about invading North Korea for years under various pretexts. Now they've settled on the fact that North Korea actually dared to build a deterrent weapon. And especially now, with the behavior we are seeing coming from this White House, every nation that has got nuclear weapons is going to be hanging on to them that much harder. Every nation that does not have nuclear weapons is going to be looking at some way to get them. Either they're going to mount their own development program or they're going to try and buy one on the black market from Israel, the way South Africa tried to do. So it's legitimate to be talking about nuclear war as a reality. Not that silly Bert the Turtle cartoon. Maybe hunt down the film Atomic Cafe. That's a good one. I'm going to see if I can find that online during the next commercial break here. All right. Rick in Arizona, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, I just want to comment about two things quick. The bomb in Afghanistan on Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Now, that is a landlocked country, and the terrain is treacherous, to say the least. I was just wondering how they're getting around over there without being seen. And how are all these other countries getting nuclear weapons when they don't speak English, they can't read algebra, and their writing is pictorial? Like, who gave China the user manual and converted it into Chinese? They were on bicycles 45 years ago. I mean, do they really have nukes? Is this propaganda for the world?
Wait a minute.
Pakistan?
We're talking about which country? North Korea?
Any of these countries that were on bicycles 40 years ago all seem to have nukes. I mean, Russia didn't have nukes until the Rosenbergs gave them the formula. I mean, so how do these countries that have pictorial alphabets, they can't even read algebra, they can't read English, who gave them the user manual, the instruction manual to make a nuclear bomb? I mean, these people were on bicycles 40 and 50 years ago.
Well,
the Russians couldn't build one until the Rosenbergs gave them the formula.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the technology on how to build a nuclear bomb is actually out there in the public domain now. But that's not really the issue. It's acquiring the fissionable materials. Because your basic uranium fission bomb, it's just a tube. And there are 2 chunks of uranium at each end below the critical mass. They get shoved together to create the critical mass. It goes bang. You are now all in possession of the secret of how to build a fission uranium bomb. The hard part is getting that refined uranium.
You have to convert it. You have to convert it in a super collider or something like that.
No, you refine it in centrifuge.
You have to rock it together.
Hey, Rick, my turn, my radio show. Okay, you have to enrich the uranium by refining it in centrifuges. Yes, it's a very complex technology, but every country, no matter how poor their common people are, the military has got money to work with. They can hire experts. They can send students to other countries to learn technology in the universities. But again, we need to remember that when the former government of South Africa collapsed, documents surfaced showing that at the time of the collapse, the former government of South Africa and Israel were in discussions for South Africa to buy a nuclear weapon from Israel. And there was one nuclear event called the Vela Incident, which was a nuclear test detonation in the South Atlantic that nobody's ever officially taken credit for, but it was thought to have been a joint Israel-South African nuclear test. What's really interesting is apparently following North Korea's first nuclear test, reconnaissance aircraft flew over and grabbed some of the fallout, and apparently it was an isotopic match for samples collected after the Vela incident. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that North Korea has not, in fact, developed their own nuclear weapons, but they've bought a few from Israel, and they're building on that technology. And that is really the danger. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty was supposed to control the spread of nuclear weapons, but Israel is using it to guarantee themselves a market monopoly.
Okay, well, it's okay. My life experience tells me, and my attitude is, I think these people that they're telling us have nukes, they really don't have them. That's my opinion and my life experience. It's a little more complicated than all these third world countries showing up with nukes. So, okay, you explained it pretty good for me. Thank you.
All right, and we're going to switch over to Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike.
Hello.
You hear me?
I hear you.
Hi. Okay. Very good. I think it is completely inappropriate for Republic to play polka music in their time slot. Did they speak Good Morning Vietnam? I thought Adrian Cronauer fixed this.
Okay. All right.
It just doesn't work. Market share is going to be sufficiently threatened under the circumstances as it is. You know what I mean? In a time of crisis, you need to be really having popular stuff on.
I don't know. I think we could enlarge our market up there in North Dakota.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. If you have pretty good population density and a high demographic, I guess you're good.
And if we go to nuclear war, they may be the only state left.
Okay. You got to go where the market is.
All right.
All right. I guess. But I was going to say I'm hoping with this North Korea thing that this is going to ultimately end up being just saber rattling there. Obviously it's built to that. So for me, there's this huge qualitative difference between the notion of continuing operations or expanding them to balkanize Syria versus North Korea. North Korea, just in my psyche, feels like a totally different trip trigger that takes things to a whole nother plateau.
Okay, Glenn, okay, we all have to be cautious about what we think is actually going on in North Korea, because everything we think we know about North Korea has come to us via the same corporate media that insisted Saddam had nuclear weapons, that Ahmadinejad wanted to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. We cannot, ignore the possibility that Kim Jong-un is actually a really cool guy. He's just being lied about to justify an invasion.
Oh, yeah, okay, right. But okay, well, either way, I'm thinking that it's probably wise to leave them alone and let them stew in their own juices. I really don't think it's absolutely necessary to go in and start up a hornet's nest with him. Frankly, part of me would just hope for a military coup, and one of these older, stodgy generals would just go up and put one right between his eyes, or have a military coup or something like that. Maybe the dynastic succession thing isn't working out so well for him. You know?
Well, my attitude is that's the North Koreans' problems to solve, and we've got so many problems here at home. Our government doesn't really have any business sticking its nose into any other country's business. And moreover than that, we can hardly be held up as any kind of an ideal society for anybody else to emulate when you look at all the corruption, the election fraud, the absolute fascist pandering to corporate interests by forcing us to buy things we don't want, like vaccines and GMO. We're not a model society. And that's why I loved that speech in the premiere episode of HBO's The Network. We're not the greatest nation on earth anymore. We used to be, but we're not, and we'd better start dealing with that right now.
Right, I totally agree. I actually, part of me wonders if they have an urgency to get something going before this debt ceiling drop dead date, the debt ceiling vote, or the economic indicators. From what I'm hearing, listening to the various economists, and they seem to say that third quarter this year, June, is when the economic stuff's really going to hit the fan, and they may well want their war as a distraction before all that really starts in earnest. But anyway, thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. If they can actually get a state of war going, then there's no more debt ceiling. That's why bankers love the wars. They love the world wars because all the governments say, okay, there's no debt ceiling, we're just going to borrow like crazy. And that enslaves their people to the bankers for the next 100 years, and that is the scam behind it all. Okay, I just located a copy of the Atomic Cafe, and on this next commercial break, I'm going to go ahead and post it to whatreallyhappened.com. You need to watch this. When it first came out, it was actually banned in the United States. It took a major court case on First Amendment grounds for this documentary to be shown in the United States of America, and that tells you that you should watch it. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And unfortunately, the link to the Atomic Cafe I found turned out to be a pay-per-view. So I'm going to see if it's available anywhere for free. It was released back in 1983. And apparently it's been recopyrighted, and if you want to see it, you can hunt it down, you can pay for it. I'd like to find a free one, but it is worth watching. And our control room was saying there are other films like Boy and His Dog and The Hills Have Eyes. Well, those are fictional, and they're dramatizations. The Atomic Cafe is actually built up of real documentary footage from the development and testing of America's nuclear arsenal and what it really does to people and structures on the ground. Now, the last Indiana Jones film, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that whole opening about the atomic bomb test, that stuff really went on. The government would go out to the nuclear test site, they'd build a town, and they would have all the stuff in there, and then they'd literally set off the bomb to see what was going to happen. All right, we're going to take another phone call here. John in Chicago, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Regarding the 21,000-pound bomb, the movie that came to my mind was Spies Like Us with Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd. You remember that movie?
I remember that one.
Yeah, I think everybody should watch that and then go to the part where the general gives the speech. Remember, because the base of the movie was that our two goofs were sent over there to launch an ICBM against the United States so they could shoot it down from space with a laser.
Yep.
And then what did the general say? A weapon unused is a useless weapon?
Yes.
When I saw that big orange thing, that's exactly the movie line that came to mind. That this is all about increasing arms sales again. This stuff's all sitting around, nobody's using it. The small munitions stuff sold in the Middle East, that doesn't make a whole lot of money.
Well, as a matter of fact, you're absolutely right, because after the fall of the Soviet Union, everyone kept saying, we don't need to spend as much money on defense. We've got huge stockpiles of weapons. We've got these tanks. We've got the nuclear deterrent. We don't need to keep this big military-industrial complex going. So, of course, one of the purposes of having a war is to use up all the weapons and supplies so they can turn around to the taxpayers and say, we need more weapons and supplies. It's your duty as a patriotic citizen to live more austere, poverty-stricken lives so that we can have all the weapons that we need. And, yeah, the Vietnam was a classic example of that. They're going on out and bombing empty fields just to use up the bombs.
Right. The other thing is, did you know Mike Pence is coming to your backyard in about 10 days?
Oh, swell. That'll wreck all the traffic.
He's doing an Asian trip, and then he's going to end it at Pearl Harbor. So if you and Claire... I mean, there's probably going to be some protesters out there, but if you want to express your sore displeasure at that guy, you'll get to do it. He'll be there in Pearl Harbor at the end of his trip.
Well, I imagine he'll be under heavy security, and I don't. Maybe not. What point would there be in it? They're not listening to us anymore.
Well, go meet some protesters face to face.
All right, I'll do that. All right, we got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back.